Welcome to the Fit Affiliate podcast, where we discuss behaviour and behaviour-based conversations as it applies to affiliate owners and coaches in the CrossFit space. My name's Lisa Hetherington. I'm the podcast coordinator for Fit Affiliate and co-host of the podcast with Chuck Bennington and Tony Ronke, founders of Fit Affiliate. We have got a great episode for you today, guys. I am super excited for this one. We were lucky enough to sit down for a conversation with the one and only Brian Chontosh, aka Tosh. Some of you in the CrossFit space will have heard about Tosh or maybe even been involved in some of his projects, including the Diesel Days sessions, his work with the Travis Manion Foundation, his Big Fish organisation, which is not for profit, which is designed to help support military service people find purpose and meaning in their lives as they transition from service to civilian life, and try and change the trajectory where so many returned service people suffer with extreme mental health issues and wind up taking the path of suicide, which is incredibly sad given that the service and sacrifice they'd already given. So Tosh is deeply passionate about in that space, deeply involved. We also talked to Tosh today about some of his exciting challenges that he's done in the past, some of his work, from being in a shipping container for 24 hours to his current challenge that he's training hard for. The end of the year, he and his team, there will be 4 gentlemen on a boat rowing across the Atlantic, aiming to do it in less than 30 days. Absolutely phenomenal effort. Working hard for that goal and definitely chasing down a record on that. It's completely unsupported. But you could sit and listen to Tosh for hours. He covers a lot on leadership, self-reflection, self-development, and ownership, and people taking ownership of their story and their path. It was a really powerful chat, and I know that we'll definitely have Tosh on next time. If you're an affiliate owner and you have a story, we would love to talk to you as well. We would love to feature you on our podcast. If you'd like to reach out, there's a link in the show notes below. Send us a message. We would love to get you on and have a chat. We love telling the stories of the affiliate community. We're here to support the affiliate community because we believe the importance and the power of the affiliates. Before we begin, it's important to emphasize that today's discussion and all discussions on our podcast are separate from our work with Fit Affiliate. And the opinions represented here do not inherently reflect our views within the organisation. It is, however, our hope to regularly and continuously bring you zero-cost conversations around behaviour and behaviour-based discussions for your consideration and utilisation. Without further ado, let's get to today's episode.
17th, 17th, 19th, I don't
know.
And
a couple months.
while we get the stars aligned here, welcome back to another episode of the Fit Affiliate podcast. Joined today by Chuck and Tony. Chuck has come back from his worldwide travels, but we have a special guest today with Brian Chontosh, aka Tosh. It's great to have you on, mate, and hear some of your adventures.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Good intro. I don't ever get intros like that. That's awesome. I welcome. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to reconnect with Tony and Chuck. I haven't seen Chuck in a while and Tony in a hot minute. And Tony was responsible for onboarding my mother into CrossFit at the age of 57. So I didn't. It's your mom, and you only trust certain people with your mom, and it was just like, yeah, who can I send it to? And it's like, Tony, it's a no-brainer. Not to insult any of the other affiliates that were CrossFit affiliates that were in Rochester.
I mean, I'm cool. It's all right. We know that. It's fine. I'm just saying.
It was Paradigm Fitness. There's a plug.
There we go.
All right, man. Anyways, good to be here. Good to see you guys.
Happy to have you here.
Happy to have you.
Not very easy to coordinate all of our schedules, so I'm just glad that we were able to get something together, and really during our regular recording schedule, which is even better. So thanks for giving up the time. Who wants to start interrogating Tosh, or do I get to do it?
You get to do it, I think, today.
You can take lead, and I'll pull in behind you.
Well, so the reason I wanted to put Mr. Brian Chontosh on here, the infamous Tosh, is that I don't think, and there's a lot of really fascinating people in the CrossFit world, and he's going to decline this whole thing because it's just the way he is, but there's very few people who are as interesting as this dude is. And so I figured if we could get a little bit of his backstory and a little bit of who he is, I think a lot of people are aware of who you are now, especially for we'll talk about a little bit with the Diesel days, and then hopefully they know about the Big Fish Foundation as well. But I certainly see people talking about you more often. I think that's amazing. So if I can get the story of you, the person out there, the person that I know is like a really good friend, someone I consider family, that would be really cool, because I think a lot of people know you through that work, and that's great. And I'm glad you're getting that publicity, but you, the person, is fucking fascinating. So I would like to spend some time talking about that. And I think if we can share that story, I think it'll open some doors for a lot of people. So that's why I dragged you on here. Plus, I just haven't seen your face in so long. So I've got you
got that gray up in that beard nowadays, huh?
Racing stripes, bro. They're racing stripes. It's, I'm a man. I dye it. It's just dyed white. I'm not actually as old as I am. I'm still only in my 20s. It's fine.
Good guys.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I appreciate you thinking that I'm so interesting. It's funny because Nicole talks about a lot. Like, I'm hard to appreciate at first. Kind of like, I don't know, cigars or whiskey or something. Like, it's an acquired taste maybe. And I think I turn a lot of people off initially, whether it's just persona or whatever it is. But I find that some of the best relationships I have with people are ones that just kind of, which is pretty normal, I suppose, after time, and it's with the people that I've turned off initially in the beginning, but after time, because of being forced to be together or something, that there's an appreciation that starts to grow. But yeah, sure. Just a quick background, I guess, is what you're asking. I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. That was pretty much the bulk of my life. I retired in 2013, so now coming up on 9-10 years of trying to figure out who I am, absent of that Marine Corps structure. I went through a challenging transition with processing a lot of the stuff that I experienced in the military, but then also with that who am I question that just sort of plagues people. And the more you spend time thinking about it and asking more and more questions, the deeper into that hole you get. And I came through it.
Crisis. Yeah.
What's that?
There's no shortage of existential crisis around these parts.
Oh, yeah. And what's funny is I think the more that we get influenced or inundated with that stuff via social media, I think it just creates a heightened sensitivity to it all. And it's like, hey, guess what, world? You're perfectly fucking, can I swear on this?
Yeah, you can say all the shit.
All right. You're perfectly normal in what you're explaining. But I feel like, we're just so saturated with self-help, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, and leadership and this and that we forget sometimes that we're all imperfect and nobody's got the answers. Just certain people manage your perception that make you think they have the answers, and then you try to emulate them, but really behind the curtain, they're just a giant shit show.
Yeah.
So I went through that and started a leadership through experiential learning company called Crooked Butterfly Ranch, and I've been doing that now since 2016, just helping people understand basically that process and trying to teach them ways and methods to thinking to get them through their own self-imposed roadblocks and things like that. Increase performance.
What was the impetus for launching that? Like, what was the thing that made you decide, you know what, I'm going to bring this to life and I'm going to make this exist in the world, and we're going to put people through it because it's important?
Yeah. So I guess, I got out of the military and I started working for Nicole at CrossFit as a level 1 trainer, and then doing some special projects for Greg and Dave. Some amazing, incredible stuff there. And then my name somehow got floated to a lady out in Philadelphia to be an event director for their Triumph games. And I accepted that and basically took disabled veterans and put them through a little kind of a competition up at West Point. And it was really awesome. I think it was on CBS or something like that, but whatever. And that introduced me to a couple individuals from Power Home Remodel who were there facilitating the event. And they said, hey, would you run a a leadership thing for our company, 250 people at Vail. And I was like, oh, wow, like this isn't like, I don't know about that. So I called a couple buddies because, it's not, you can't have a 1 to 250 ratio for instruction.
Yeah.
And we designed a course over Vail. And what was really cool, it was around the timing of the launch of Meru with Jimmy Chin and Conrad.
Yeah.
And so they brought those guys in. Like, this was a huge production. So they brought those guys in as well. And I was day 2, they were day 1, and found an interest, I suppose, not necessarily a knack. I feel like I've got some competency in the leadership and motivation realm. And then saw that there's a potential business opportunity here to have purpose in life outside of the Marine Corps again, as I was starting to stall a little bit with my interest of traveling all the time on a seminar staff and whatnot. So, and then just clients just kept asking, "Hey, Tosh, can you do an event for us? Can you do an event for this? Can you train me?" And so, it just kind of launched that way without a lot of pre-planning or ambition. And now I'm finding a tremendous amount of purpose helping people, find the ways that they can then take control of to be better for themselves. So many people just give you here's the 7-item checklist, just do this. And it's like, hey, it doesn't work. If it worked, everybody'd be fine. Perfect. So rather that, I like experiential learning. We come and we do activities together, and then we struggle together, and then we sort out the thought processes for arriving through a scenario better off, instead of just giving you, hey, here, just do this and then sell 1 million copies of that, because I think that's lame.
Here's my ebook.
Yeah.
I mean, to make this personal, because I'll gladly bring it back to myself, because why not? But so I think the first time I actually met you was at the games, like forever ago. I think was the first place. I can't remember if that was it, but then I remember you took the seminar. But all that aside, the thing that I think the reason why we became such fast friends was that you embody this trait that Chuck and I think is very important, which is, I would consider, we call it surgical compassion. The thing that was very immediately obvious about you, and one of the reasons why I personally wanted to put you on this podcast, and is because you very much see the world unconventionally, right? You see through the same lens that everybody else sees it, but you make this choice of seeing things differently. And that, for me, when I first met you, was so obvious. I was like, yeah, he's my people, right? Like, and you got that, because that surgical compassion thing, the thing that was so obvious is that I knew that even instantly, as soon as I met you, that like, if I asked Tosh to help me, he would help me. I might not like that help. It might not be comfortable, but we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together. And that was so obvious. And like, that's essentially central to what we do with affiliate. Like, it's a behavior thing, right? It's like behavior and behavior-based conversations, which is, we don't care what you do. I want to know why you're doing it, right? And then I'm going to help you get better at it. And so you were like, when this whole idea of a podcast came to like light, like you were actually truly the first guest. I was like, I'm bringing Tosh on this thing, because you get it. And I think a lot of people understand it, but your ability to see things, and you've seen some shit, be able to see things a little bit uniquely and differently, I think is much more received from somebody like you than people who are just like, you should definitely look for like unconventional ways to do things and pursue things and consider things. But like somebody like yourself who has been through enough other things and has worked with enough other people, that was the reason why we wanted you on the podcast, was that essentially that fresh Tosh perspective that you have of things, which I always thought was very refreshing. And I get it. Like you said, some people might find it to be abrasive or otherwise, but like they might not want to be helped. CrossFit gyms are very full of people who sometimes say they want to be helped, but don't want to be helped. But like, there's very few people on this planet that I've met who I'm like, this motherfucker going to help, and it might hurt, but it's going to help. Right. And I think that you have embodied that with everything that you've touched. And I think that that's cool. And so that's just essentially my experience with you. And one of the things that I hope to be able to further perpetuate from you being on here and then helping you promote whatever it is that you touch, because that message is so central to everybody's success. And I don't think anybody's very receptive to it. They are looking for those checklists and those quick answers and those things. And I'm like, it's probably right in front of you the whole time, because it's always been you. Let's look there first. And then you and I think hit it off that way really quickly.
Yeah, it was back in Carson, I think we met. I'm sorry, Chuck. It was back in Carson a long time ago. Yeah. I appreciate you recognizing that. I do think that there was a real quick instant connection between the two of us as I try to reminisce on the spot.
I was thinking about it before this. I was like, where did I first meet? And I was like, I think it was in the heat of California. And I think it was when I had to do one of the experiences. And I think you were like there working it or running it or coordinating. I think it was probably like a thing that you would took on for HQ. I don't remember, but I remember you being there. And I was like, this dude's cool. And it just so happens that like you're from like my hometown, and then I got to train your mom. And like it was just like this whole cavalcade of things. But I couldn't remember. I was like, I feel like I've known him forever. I don't even know where it started.
That was our intersection, was the training experience stuff at the games. But, you know, probably back a little bit more to what you guys were talking about initially, just relative to the process of experiential learning and growth and discovery. How your name often comes up when Tony and I talk outside of like coaching calls and podcast episodes is really, a lot of us get into fitness thinking that we're looking for fitness. And fitness specifically curated through CrossFit ends up teaching you a whole lot of life lessons that are otherwise hidden in plain view. And it teaches you quite a bit about yourself that you didn't know were lessons that you wanted to or needed to be taught. And you're kind of like, well, shit, here I am. But where we found it really awesome is that like you took that and you built that as the deliberate structure for the Diesel Days. Like rather than us just exposing you incidentally to fitness and exercise and like physical suffering as a way to build you as a character, what if we structured the fitness program, so to speak, to elicit that as the goal rather than just like this incidental byproduct that different people get to at different times based on whether or not they're looking for it.
Yeah, there's so much there. Wow. Let me hit on something that Tony said for a second. I want to come right straight to you, Chuck. Surgical compassion. It's interesting to hear that phrase. Later in my career in the military, I you start to move up the ranks or whatever in leadership capacity and function, and whether I was a good leader or a bad leader or whatever, doesn't matter. Thought a lot about like one of my goals for me personally as a leader, and then therefore what I feel like a goal for leadership should be is to care more about an individual than they care about themselves. And, you know, obviously in a military framework, when you have a company, 180 men, and you're responsible for everything that they fail to do and whatnot. And it's like, hey, and you see these young adults, and you just have to really care about people, have to care about human beings. And I made it an effort to try to care more about them than they did themselves. And sometimes that meant like punishing them and reducing their rank or taking away pay or whatever it was, because you cared about them so much and you needed to correct a deficiency and hold them accountable for learning. And you were always there to hold them while you just kicked them in the nuts. But, and having to set a standard for the other 170 something men, because if you don't make the correction here, you just set the new minimum standard for somebody else. And so really later in my career, I just started to think about that a lot and caring about people more than they care about themselves. And it carried on into my manner in life in general, just even outside of the Marine Corps, and I find myself thinking about that all the time today through random interactions with people on the street, supermarket, or whether they come to a Diesel Day event or whatever it is. It's just like, hey, this is a living, breathing human being. And you want to just try to care for them, having a sense of compassion for them. What they need might not necessarily be what they want. The two very rarely go hand in hand succinctly, right? So it was interesting for you to hear you say that, surgical compassion, because I think that's a really cool phrase. I'm playing with my microphone right now. That's probably not the best thing to do on camera, but yeah, it's interesting for you to say that. It struck with me. And then Chuck, I used fitness while I was in the military. About halfway through my career, I really started to fall in love with fitness because I understood that being physically dominant was a very easy and superficial way to command men's respect, especially in the infantry community, right? You gain instant credibility when you can just crush everybody. And then that gives you like the buffer to then expose whether or not you are morally, intellectually, spiritually sound and savvy as well, to continue to gain trust and confidence, and credibility, right? And so I just really took it on to be the best at everything. Obviously, I wasn't the best at everything, but I was damn near close, and definitely had an attitude to strive for it, to model the way for the other men, right? And then, play that forward into survivability in a combat situation. Obviously, fitness, right, is huge at being able to mitigate human factors and environmentals, as well as just being able to dominate a physical space. So, and that was awesome. I loved it. But then I think some point in my life, probably right around 2009, 10, 11, right in there, I found that I was overdosing with fitness to manage a lot of stuff that's going on inside because of experiences, right? And I was using that as a drug, right? I was over intoxicating on fitness, and it just consumed my life at the expense of a lot of things. I gained a lot of things, but I don't think it was good. I became addicted to it, and I was using it in weird ways, right? Like to be able to chest pump and pound in front of everybody. Look at me, I can do this, I can do that. For ego, I don't suffer. I have an aversion to using that word, but to experience tremendous discomfort, and hardship, because then two things, right? Like, hey, I'm going to learn from it, but then also I'm also dosing myself against all this other stuff that I'm feeling. And then and that's interesting. And then I found that, like, hey, like, through all this fitness stuff, like, what are you doing? What are you learning? Can you create? And that's how the Diesel Days came about, was as you start to mentor people through life, set the stage with a physical event to get them into this emotional space, and feeling things, and then to let down their barriers, their obstacles, their walls, so that they expose themselves. So then you can be there with them to get into their head and figure out what's going on in their head, so that you can start planting some seeds, so that they can prevent them from falling into those traps in their everyday life, wherever that everyday life is, right? So that was the function of Diesel Day, was to masquerade a emotional, spiritual, intellectual event with physical fitness, in order to get people to arrive at that tender place, that near vulnerable place, so that you can be there for them with compassion, to guide them and teach them, to learn tools through practical application in real time, right? Instead of just reading about it and thinking like, oh, hey, cool, like, I'm gonna just start doing this and I'm gonna be better, and that only lasts for how long, and then it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And so I just really like doing that. Now I'm finding a tremendous amount of purpose and a way to connect with people, in that avenue. I was talking to a team guy, Clint Bruce, pretty accomplished team guy. He's living out in Dallas now. And he said, we have these conversations, or we did a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. And he said, hey, what you're doing, Tosh, is you're leveraging skills that you learned on the battlefield and ball field for people to be able to apply them in the boardroom and the breakfast table. And I was like, holy shit, Clint. Clint's a master with language and words. Like, I just love listening to him talk. Yeah, he's phenomenal. Like, just to listen, to hear him and how he packages words and thoughts together, it's really beautiful. It's harmony. And that's what it is. It's skills that are applicable, battlefield, ball field, breakfast table, and boardroom, right?
Yeah.
The battlefield meaning combat, whatever your combat is, right? Whatever your hardship or experience is. The ball field is the field of play, in endeavors of activities and passion. Breakfast table is with your family and loved ones, and boardroom is obviously in your profession, right? And if you can build tools, processes, systems, and procedures that are able to be utilized regardless of the environment, then that's a really cool system and procedure to capitalize on, right? Instead of having to decode, like, hey, I'm in this environment, I need to be this person, or I need to use this strategy, or I need to, like, if you just have one play that gets the ball running, I don't know if balls run, but like gets the ball running across whatever endeavor you're in, and then you can start to adapt and evolve to the specific situation. But you got to have a really good baseline, right? The foundation of the pyramid, and that's what I try to do with my work with Crooked Butterfly.
Yeah, I mean, I have a unique perspective into your life because I know your mother. So like it's kind of cool to listen to like your backstory and hear you espouse it and talk about it. But like I get the unique perspective that everybody knows Tosh for Tosh, but like I know how Tosh's mom views Tosh, which is actually fascinating. So I know what it's like and how much of your life has been consumed by your physical endeavors and how much that has also potentially, poor Robin has been like he's locking himself in a shipping container for 24 hours, right? So I know how driven you are to all expenses, and I guess that brings us into this conversation about what it is that you're doing with Diesel Days, because like it's getting publicity, and I think that it's fantastic because it is such a powerful thing. Like it was, as soon as I saw you were doing it, I was like, that's literally a no-brainer. For one, it's 100% on brand with you. But two, like I get it from a physical endeavor in terms of exposing vulnerabilities and getting people into that state of openness, I guess. I don't like to use that word. That sounds woo-woo, but of openness. And so I get it. It's just funny because now in the CrossFit world, I guess my fear is that everybody is so addicted, right? Like so many people are on that addiction. So it's interesting to hear you mention that, because I don't necessarily say with fear, it's my perception that I wonder how many people view Diesel Days as like some weird amount of like 24 hours of hero WOD sort of rite of passage thing. And I hope, and maybe you can elaborate, because I would love for them to realize just how immense an opportunity Diesel Days is, above and beyond the physical suffering, and what really is the intention to come out of that. Because I think sometimes it gets lost in them. They're just like, oh, it's like 24 hours of working out. I'm like, not quite. You're going to have a bad time if that's what your intention is. If that makes sense.
Cool. It totally does. And it's I struggle with exactly that, with the branding and the image, because I don't want it to run away from me. I don't want people to think, because we put images of, Dustin Virgil and James Hobart, and they're all super jacked and they're fitness commodities, and that this is this is just another like beat down hell week something.
Because military dude is gonna beat us up.
Yeah, and what's funny is people that don't know me, they come like, so I do a lot of work with organizations, and then we just had a big my number one client, Travis Manning Foundation, here a couple of weeks ago. And a couple of people is like, yeah, hey, I don't know if I really wanted to sign up for this expedition because Tosh is this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, hey, no, I'm absolutely not that, really.
Yeah,
There's a persona, because people are attached to, your storyline. But when they get to meet me, they're, wow, this guy is so not that. He's so not military. He does have some military things and he can go there, but he's made this amazing transition from military life into, I'm not afraid of woo-woo stuff anymore, because I don't think it has a bad connotation in my mind. I think it's very important, because it's something that I had deliberately turned off for over 20 years of my life. Right. And so, fighting through that and trying to manage the brand of the Diesel Day. I mean, we were going to do a Diesel Day with Athena Perez in the Scaled Nation group. She came to a Diesel Day last year. And we launched a video. It's on the website. You can check it out. But it really explains a lot more what Diesel Day is. It's not the physical 24 hours is mildly interesting. And it's really the masquerade, right? Because it's a spiritual and psychological event, teaching people tools and techniques to take control of their emotions and to accept their emotions and be able to work through them and understand why they're having an emotion or a conception about what they're experiencing. And we teach nutrition, we teach movement, we teach leadership, all kinds of stuff. We teach teamwork. Those are the underpinnings of what Diesel Day is. It's just, you have to do something. You're just moving for 24 hours, which is spooky. But I don't want to jinx myself. 81 participants in Diesel Days. We're 81 for 81 in people completing all 24 hours with no catastrophic events. And I think that's a testament to the coaches that I bring in.
That's also not that surprising.
People putting a lot of trust in us.
Not that I want to cut you off on that.
No, you're okay.
Because that is central to that same thing that you said in the beginning about who you want to be for the people you want to be, is that like you tend to care more about them. And so there's something about that environment that you can create as a person, that surgical compassion, and that like, even when I'm doubting myself, if Tosh is in my ear and he's in my corner and he's got my back, I'm like, fuck, fine. And listen, you've talked me into some shitty things through like the month-long mayhem things that I have admittedly never finished because whatever, and give me shit for that later. But like, there's an environment there that like movement is for sure the baseline. It is the structure, it is the charade, but like that is the baseline where all humans are humans, right? And so through that medium, you get to the real thing, which is behavior, right? And like, why do you act that way? Why do you have that response? Why is that important to you? Why is it a struggle for you? And it's a genius way to do it. And I think it's so valuable. And I think it is really, truly what happens at a micro scale in every single CrossFit gym and every single CrossFit workout. The key is whether or not they have that coach in their corner. And like for us, you'll hear us say a lot that coaching is just a transfer of belief. And a great coach is a person that might not tell you what you want to hear, but you know that like if they're still telling you it's okay, even when you don't believe, you're like, fuck, I'm going to keep going, right? And like that is a thing that happens when it's done really well in a CrossFit gym. And like, I know for a fact, the reason you have an 80+% completion rate is that like, you won't let me fail. Like, that's why you've got me willing to be like, fuck, I'll do it. I don't want to do anything that's 24 hours long. But I was like, if Tosh tells me I can do it, I'll fucking do it. I'm not rowing a boat across the ocean. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Hey, just a side note, you got this skinny Dave Lipson look going on. You know, those beautiful blue eyes.
Wait a minute. There's two backhanded compliments. Thanks for that. Sorry, Dave, but like now you just call me skinny and you call me Dave Lipson. I'm not sure how to process this. I'm
so fucking funny.
Total compliment across the board, man. You know, the beautiful blue eyes, the mohawk, you know.
And then I'll be your other neighbor on the other side, and then we'll all be up on the hillside together.
Oh, they moved
and
to Tampa.
now I can't unsee that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they moved, right? They've moved out of there.
They're not in Florida, but yeah, you know, the CrossFit gyms are interesting. You know, it's community, right?
Yeah.
It's all about community and the feeling like you're connected to a small little tribe that's also connected to all these other little tribes that make up this giant thing. This beautiful, wonderful energy, and some CrossFit gyms do it better than others. And it's a function of just what's going on in there in terms of coaches and egos and the environment and conditions that are set. And that's one of the big things that we struggle with Diesel Day with individuals. People come in with an ego, and just trying to help them understand what the ego is, that it's not bad. I try to teach them what the mind's mind is actually doing, and it feeds into an ego, and how you need to learn to decipher the conversation between the mind and the mind's mind so that you can frame what's going on for you in any moment. And that's really, really big. And you'll find that people come in for a Diesel, they think they're going to get A, B, and C out of it. They get a little of A, they get a little of B, maybe not so much C, but they get D, E, F, G, H, I, whatever the rest of the alphabet is. And like, oh my God, it was so much more than I thought. Like I got those things, but then I realized that those things are mildly interesting compared to the things that you delivered. And that excites me for people, because I know it excites me for myself when I went through that like awakening in my transition, you know.
I think that like the whole opportunity, I mean, just even hearing you talk about it obviously gives me goosebumps, but I also just know how passionate you are about things. So watching you lean into something is very cool for me. But like knowing the opportunity that people have to have access to somebody like you in an environment like that and with an intention like that, it's pretty rare, right? And like it's one of those things that I'm glad that it's out there, and I really hope that more people really do take it on, because that opportunity is massive, just in terms of the way you've put it together, laid it out, but just really they're giving them access to that environment in a safe environment, a controlled environment, and with somebody like, if more people, and this will sound like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but if more people could meet a person like you, the amount of opportunity that they would understand exists in the world is just on the other side of their own limiting beliefs. That's the reason why you're on this podcast, is that like, I obviously love you. I've always loved you. So like getting people to understand that like people like you exist and they do things like this, and people like them can have a place in things like this, would be awesome for us to know that like we can help funnel people to there and get them there, because I know what comes out the back end of that. I'm not sure that they do, because they are still, they're distracted with all the what's of fitness and they've forgotten the whys. And you got 24 hours of why just getting shoved down your throat. You can't come out the back end without a profound level of respect, appreciation, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. and I just think it's cool. And then there's obviously the accomplishment of like, I just fucking did that. That changes complete identities.
Yeah, I mean, you come out of this and then you realize like, oh, this shitty little problem I'm facing in my everyday life, that's nothing compared to what I can do this.
Yeah.
The Diesel Day, there's so much more involved. Like I engage with everybody before they come to the level that they choose to self-select for intention setting. To get them so that they arrive and we've already started to form intentions. We do a period of instruction after a big giant family traditional feast here on our property. You're at Nicole and I's private residence to do this. And we talk about checking in with the left hand. It's 5 simple things that when you're facing some sort of struggle or adversity or challenge, just pull up your left hand and pick a finger and then dig into what that finger represents. And you'll find that you've gained the appropriate amount of momentum to start to solve. A big thing is we teach what's most important, what greatest import is your response to a situation, not necessarily the situation. And we can dig into a lot of that. But most of the time you find people spend a majority of their efforts articulating a situation, whether that's to validate their accomplishment or to mitigate their failure. And it's like, hey, who cares about the situation? Let's talk about your response. Painting the picture of the situation is only important enough to be able to get the stage set so that we can understand what your response was and the decisions and the feelings that you were having in the moment, right? And after the event, we do again, to whatever level of a participant chooses to self-select, constant engagement to process the event, whether it's a day after, 2 weeks after, 3 months after. I've got people that will reach out 6-7 months later and I haven't heard from them and they just want to talk about Diesel Day and how it's changed their life or how they're implementing the left hand in their life, or they want further understanding, right? And then pure selling point is you get 28 CEUs for your CrossFit accreditation. Like, I mean, I don't understand why every CrossFitter coming here.
You're gonna get so much more out of that than just like another piece of another course to just be fed more of what you already know and that you're already looking for. That a lot of it's like this quest for validation, especially when people are like, moving into that L3 level of their journey. They're like, I'm totally down to go and retake a seminar I've been through 2 times because I get to look like a fucking superhero in the room. And you're like, you're kind of missing the point, both of continuing education and of growth.
Yeah, growth mindset for sure, right? That's a huge thing. Under Carol Dweck, I mean, that's the underpinnings of everything that I do. And I think the reason. So, my time is I'm getting ready to liquidate a bunch of interests and pour my heart into both the Big Fish Foundation and Crooked Butterfly. And that'll be coming up after we finish this row. So next year, I'm really looking to build out the Crooked Butterfly, because right now it's really just word of mouth. We don't do a lot of promotion or advertising, and I think that's fine because the people that seek out something like this, when they arrive, they're coming for the right reasons. So I want to maintain that. But you compete with a lot of loud voices on social media, right? And most of the time, the louder the voice, the more ignorant or the less beneficial the material is that they're spouting out is.
Opposite of like quiet professionals, right? Like the best in the world don't need to let anybody know they're the best because the results and the practical application takes care of it. But
yeah, and I appreciate marketing, but and brand image and whatever and doing that, and I'm growing, I'm maturing through all of that, but there's a lot of big names out there that they're really suspect, but they're jacked and they're handsome and they're aggressive and they draw an interest of a crowd. And I think they feed that whole, not to bring in another concept of toxic masculinity into play, which I constantly fight as a pet project, right? Because I don't believe in that.
And then the whole algorithm supports it, right? And it just becomes this cycle. We just had Barbara on here talking about this exact thing. He's like, he's like, I can't make anything of actual organic content because it doesn't do anything. So I got to do influencer shit and come up half naked, and everybody watches it. He's like, so I'll play the game.
Or also what happens is I put something out there, and then 4 weeks later I'll see somebody else And I'm like, man, I know I don't own the thought material, but that just sounds like my shit because you're using the same word and the same phrasing.
Yeah.
And it just frustrates me. But, to Bill Henniger, lead, don't chase. Bill, a significant mentor of mine, right? Rogue Fitness, fascinating human being. I love the guy. He's amazing. Just understanding Bill's story and Rogue Fitness's story and why they exist and what they're trying to do for people and community. And, he's just got that quote. He's like, hey, Tosh, just don't worry about that shit. Just lead, don't chase. Lead, don't chase. And so that's one of the things that I have written down on my desk. I got a bunch of index cards all over my desk, and they're in no order, and they're just hidden underneath all kinds of paperwork. But inevitably, the right index card pops up to the surface when the gods decide that it needs to be in your life again, or you need to be reminded. And it's like, hey, lead, don't chase pops up quite a bit.
Yeah. Love it. So you're obviously a person that's driven by passion, and I guess this leads us into the Big Fish Foundation. Naturally, you're ex-military, you were retired, so that obviously leads itself to understanding it. But maybe you can tell the audience why the Big Fish Foundation, why that was so important to you, why it needed to exist, and why supporting just another one wasn't going to happen. Like, if you can lean into that passion a little bit, and how Diesel Day kind of relays into that as well.
Yeah. So a little backstory. I just really got tired of hearing about guys I served with, guys and gals that I haven't served with, hanging themselves in a garage for their kid to find them, or blowing their brains out at the playground in front of everybody, and and drinking themselves to massive amounts of inebriation, and then driving their car and killing somebody else and then themselves. And I just got tired of hearing all that. And so couple that with, I think there's a lot of well-intended but basically futile attempts at combating veteran suicide, right? And it doesn't have to be veteran suicide. It's all suicide, but and I'm going to get beat up. I get beat up every time I say it. And I say this to elicit a response. I do think a little bit more about it than what I'm going to say, but I think doing 22 push-ups and posting yourself on Instagram and tagging 22 friends is stupid. I don't think it does anything. And it just, but whatever. So
I issue started, of awareness, right? Like the ice bucket challenge and that shit. Like, everybody knows that these are real fucking problems, but no amount of like push-ups and tags saves a life, at least not that I'm aware of in any like quantifiable way.
Well, it might, who knows? But I also wonder quite a bit of how much of it is just for the influencer piece. Like, oh, cool, I'm going to get 10 more followers, or hey, I'm on social media, and it's like, okay, cool, like do your thing. But then I also grew up with phenomenal mentor Pat Millay. He's like, well, why don't you, if you have a better way of doing it, then why don't you do it instead of always poking holes at it, poking a finger? That's a left-hand thing. Your index finger pointing at shit and flip it over 3 ways back at you. And so it's like, okay, great. Like, if you have different ideas, then put it into play. And so I started a chewing tobacco company, and I was going to, because what I was doing was I was spending my own money, Crooked Butterfly money, to do events for veterans. And obviously that's not a sustainable model, right? Like, unless I was independently rich, which I'm not. And so, I'm in the red every year with Crooked Butterfly because I'm spending so much money just trying to do things for my community. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a chewing tobacco company because I like chewing tobacco, and I can do this without the chemicals and stuff, and it'll be cool, and I'll brand it military. And I made a batch up, and because I make my own chewing tobacco from time to time, and then I'll sell that, and then all of the money that's made from doing that as a hobby will go directly into funding veterans to attend Crooked Butterfly events. That way I'm not, dissolving my funds. And I was doing that for a little bit, and I went down to hang out with Bill at his ranch in Texas, and I brought some down, and he loved it and thought it was a great idea. It's like, hey, you should do this. You should do this. We've got something here. And, and of course we start, he's an amazing big thinker too, right? It's like, hey, just like Black Rifle when Evan started doing coffee in his garage, and look where they're at today. And like, you could do this with chewing tobacco. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it. And I go back home and I advertised it out, and I sold like 15 pounds of chewing tobacco, which is quite a bit when you package them in 3-ounce bags. And I did just enough research to get the answer that I wanted, right, through the internet, through the Googles. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm legit. All I have to do is do this and this, and I'm fine. And I go down to FedEx after I make this batch, and I sold it all within like 2 days. And I go to ship it. So I'm down there with 15 pounds of packages. And I'm not talking like 15 packages. We're talking like 50 to 100 packages to mail.
Yeah.
And the FedEx guy's like, okay, what's in these packages? And I don't lie, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, chewing tobacco. Oh, well, that's on the restricted to ship list, like that I have along with all this shit. And I'm like, holy cow, like, really? It's just, I just made it in my hand. I'm just mailing it to a bunch of buddies and this and that. Well, you need to have a certain stamp. I'm like, well, how do I get that stamp? Well, you got to go do this. So I'm gonna go back home and I look into that. And in order to get that stamp, you got to get this stamp. And in order to get that stamp, you got to get approval from these government agencies. And I was like, oh my God, this is
like
tedious. Yeah, and they make it exceptionally hard to do that. And I don't know if it's because of, tobacco lobbyists or whatever. But and then I contacted a person to help with all of that after hanging out with Bill again and again. And he's like, let's just do it. And it's like 3 to 5 years to get all this done, and it's an exorbitant amount of money to do it. And I'm just like, hey, the barrier to entry is so significant. That's why people aren't doing it. And so then I got discouraged, and I was like, well, fuck this, then I'll figure something else out, or I guess it won't go. And Bill says, well, and this is what a business mentor does. He's like, well, what are you trying to do? Like, I just want to help veterans, right? I'm getting tired of this and this. And he's like, okay, so you're trying to go from A to D by doing B and C. Why don't you get rid of B and C and just do D, turn it into B? He's something like that, right? I'm like, well, he said, just start a nonprofit. I'm like, oh, Jesus, start a nonprofit. There we go. That's exactly what I need to do. Start a nonprofit. And so I was reluctant. I drug my feet for a little while, a little over a year. And he's just awesome. He just slow plays you and just lets you arrive. And then finally I started a nonprofit. And it's been probably the best thing I've done in this space, right? Like business or helping others or doing things. And since I got out of the military, like, it's just been so good. We're coming in, finishing up our third year, and it's just growing and growing. I think we made it 3 years is like one of the hallmark things. Like, hey, if you can make it 3 years as a nonprofit, you're well on your way. Hit 5-year mark and you're in. And I'm going to brag a little bit about the people that we're using, because we're trying to minimize all overhead. And this year, 96 cents on every dollar went into a program.
That's
directly
that's
to support a veteran
for that world. That's
everybody amazing. Said you couldn't do it. You're not going to get over 90% this and that. And you know what? The nonprofit space has a bad name, largely because of wounded warriors and all this and that, and some of the fraud and all these other things that went on with a lot of nonprofits. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. Like, no, we should go here. And I was like, hey, no, I said 95% was going to do it. And we hit it this year. So 90 last year, actually, our 2022, but super stoked to say, hey, 96 cents, but it's by doing everything, all volunteer, everything low overhead, no overhead, like just, and it's been great, so I'm really, really happy. And we're going to organize more formal. We'll probably dip down to about 85% next year, as we start to allocate funds to be able to increase our programs. And, as things get bigger, you need more help, and quality of free labor is exactly that. Right. And so by holding people accountable and getting good work, and then having good infrastructure and technology set in place so that you can continue to grow for the sole reason of having greater reach to make greater impact. And so if I can make 85 cents have a 3x amount of impact as 95 cents, it makes more sense to go 85% return to programs. So really excited by the Big Fish Foundation, but that's how it started that way. And what we try to do is, we're not trying to solve or fix veteran suicide, right? Like that doesn't make sense. We're trying to make a positive impact against it. Right. And so that's a very, very deliberate phrasing. That's what we try to do. We endeavor to impact against veteran suicide. And I think by framing it that way, it opens up the doors to how you're going to think and apply yourself and your efforts and who your audience is going to be. And so we're non-clinical. It's basically just leveraging me in the way I think, very similar a la, Diesel Days and stuff, to veterans to help them find the tools to think and process when they're at a low and to organize themselves to get through those lows, mitigate the trough, the depth of the trough, and just invigorate in how to look at life again. And so I'm really, really having a good time with it. And how do you measure impact, right? Like, because we sent this many emails, because we raised this much money, because we did this many programs, like that's all quantitative, but you can't really put a number on the qualitative thing except, through testimonials and whatnot. And if, like, hey, well, you saved 50 lives this year. I don't know if you can say that because the individual didn't take their life. Like, so there's no real way of knowing, but you feel it, it, and you can't discount that feeling, right? And we're also not looking to help. So where I was going with non-clinical, it's like, hey, I'll get people contacting, like, hey, I'm, I got a buddy, he's getting ready to pull a trigger. I'm like, okay, hey, I'm not the resource for that. Here is the resource for it. Get them there. But I also am still in your corner to help. And I want to be there after that resource gets done checking their check in the box, because we're not a check in the box, right? A lot of these other resources are, hey, I get my check in the box, I helped, I'm very short term, I'm very acute correction.
Yeah.
But there's very little follow through. And so trying to build skills and mindset strategies that, transfer into the follow through stage that help them through 5 and 10 years down the road. And we don't, I don't target the, there's a big stigma in the veteran community for reaching out for help, and partly because there's the pride in all of this and whatnot going on. Then there's the fear of feeling weak or vulnerable, but also there's a handful of very, very small minority group of veterans that have the loudest voices, and they give a stereotype that all veterans are broken, needy, clingy. They like to take advantage of. They have a great sense of entitlement, this, that, and it turns away a lot of high-functioning veterans that are still struggling inside. And while it was a sergeant major when I was going through some counseling, Army sergeant major, probably saved my life, or allowed my life to be what it is today. This was about 5 years ago when I was going through some struggles. And he said, hey, the fact that you're managing it is the problem. And it's not going to go away. Don't try to solve it, but you need to accept that you need something that you're going to manage, and you need to build resources and an infrastructure around you to help you through when you're having the greatest struggle managing, because that's when the problems happen. And so I've taken that approach with all of this to support veterans that are high functioning. You'd look at them, because when have you heard somebody, they committed suicide? I expected that to happen. You don't really get that, right? It's always, I never expected that. I didn't see it coming. But now that I look at it, there was this sign and this sign, and geez, it was so subtle. And man, they've got a wonderful family, they got a wonderful life, a good job, they got a bunch of friends, they got some toys. I never saw that coming. And it's always the good ones, the ones that are struggling in silence, that we seek to help out. And we just that's what we do. We try to bump the people that are high functioning to prevent them from finding themselves in a space where they can't function. And so we don't focus on the people that can't function. We get them to resources that are better equipped,
better
trained
practice. Like that is where they belong.
It's such a it's such a powerful distinction.
It's to stay in your lane, right? It's a stay in your lane mentality, and you find that is not. I'm actually getting ready to record my own podcast tonight about that. Something that frustrates me a lot is people that, hey, you know what? The best thing that you could do right now is just shut the fuck up, because what you're weighing in on is not even in your lane, and you're just you're just presenting opinions, and you're actually doing more harm. You're either turning people off or causing misinformation. And you know what? Like, stay in your fucking lane, dude.
Right. Like, are you?
I'm sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
Are you seeking to be heard?
Yeah. I mean, creating that distinction that you guys are not looking to cure, but simply affect, I think is so powerful. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to the whole cause anyways, is suicide is a big thing for me. It's affected my whole life, many different places. I'm not a veteran, but even personally, I've obviously suffered through the chaos that is that thought process. And like, one of the unfortunate problems of cure, it becomes very dismissive in nature, right? And so for somebody who sits on the precipice that, by all accounts has it all together, the last thing they're looking for is absolution, right? They're just looking for just give me hope, right? And like, there's a really good quote about that, and that is just that, like, it's essentially the absence of hope. And once that's gone, it's there, but nobody's looking for a cure. They're just looking for something to believe in. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And I'm glad that, you referenced that. And I think if I can call more attention to that, so people who are listening to this are like, oh, right. Like, it's not about solving, suicide. It's about giving people the opportunity to be aware and pose them to an alternative and let them take any degree of that path. Right. Because that's very much the mission statement of the company, that we see a world in which people do the things they do, not because they want to, but just because they don't know that there's another choice. And so if we can pose alternatives to them in their business, and like in your situation and just their life in general, we believe that they will follow that alternative of their own volition. And that, I think, is so very powerful and important, especially for somebody who's dealing with something that's such an immense, has an immense stigma around it, where it's hard to go ask for help. But like, it's much easier to be like, hey, how's it going? Right? Like, that's a very different sort of conversation. At least that's how I view it.
Yeah, well, and it's easier to be dismissed when you are that high functioning person. Like, even for a lot of people that do seek help, they're like, dude, you've got a great wife, a great family, you make good money, you live in a nice house. Like, go and let me allocate my time and energy to somebody with like real problems. And you're like, no, you don't get it.
Yeah.
I spent my whole life thinking that these would bring me the cure. These would bring me the resolution. And like Tony's saying, I'm all out of hope. Because like, my life is better than I ever imagined it to be in so many ways, but this voice in the back of my head on my bad days is still the loudest thing that has ever happened. I mean, it's a rifle shooting right next to you. It's like a fucking turbine engine.
It's nuts. You hit it right on the head, Chuck. Man, it's a whole bunch of Band-Aids, and it's like, man, no matter how many Band-Aids you're putting on with a hot wife, rich wife, nice car, dogs, boat, vacations, like, they're all. It's not quieting the internal bleeding that's going on, and you gotta get after that. And like you said too, it's dismissive. It's like, hey, I know I got all that. Believe me, it's in my mind every night when I go to bed. I have all this, but why am I still feeling the way I'm feeling? Like, I'm struggling just to hold on. I think I did put it in my podcast, the last one I recorded, about I was sitting in a car wash and I just started crying, man. I got a text message from a buddy and it just triggered, and he was struggling, and I'm sharing, and we're both sharing the same exact things, even though they're different, they're manifesting differently. And it's just like, the conversation was, I'm just laying down in the bottom of the trench right now. I'm just laying down in the bottom of the trench, holding on as hard as I can. My knuckles are white. I'm just, when am I gonna lose the grip? And I'm just holding on. And as soon as somebody's looking, I stand up and I
play the
game.
Look
good. I do that. And then as soon as nobody's looking, it's like, man, I'm just bottomed out again at the bottom of the trench, just barely holding on. And I don't want to do that. I want to give people opportunities to relax their grip, never let go, but to be able to relax it and to understand it and to know, like, hey, everything you're experiencing is absolutely normal. And the more people that tell you that I need to fix you, it submits somehow that you're broken, you're wrong, you need to get fixed, and what you're experiencing is not normal. And it's the exact, there's a dissonance, a cognitive dissonance that happens inside of somebody that's struggling when they're saturated by those external or outside voices, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a big one. And I think that, like, it's getting people to understand that they can partner with hope and they don't have to partner with death is such a compelling and profound thing, where, like, unfortunately, I hope nobody's ever gets there, but the amount of people who I do know are at that point where they're just like, the only logical partner I have left in the absence of all this hope. So I guess
there are more people that you look at every single day that that you have intimate relationships with that are closer to what we're talking about than you would ever imagine. And not to mention strangers.
I mean, all of us. It's one of the reasons I think a lot of us are compelled to coaching and helping. Right? It's our ability to believe in other people, and so it lets us partner with that, and that hope allows us to overlook the avoidance of our own hope, I suppose, our own abandonment of our own hope. And I think I'm not saying it's a mark of a great coach, but I can for sure say that definitely gives way to some degree of surgical compassion.
There is some statistical significance to like great coaches, regardless of the context, that like that's a piece of the execution. They're like, I want to care for you in a way that I wish somebody would care for me, but I don't know how to ask for that.
Right.
For sure. That's cool. Hey, I just want to let everybody know that's listening and not watching that Chuck has changed his outfit twice. He's taken his glasses off. He's moved into 3 different locations. He was in an office. He was outside on some wicker swinging sex toy, and now he's someplace else. I have no idea where he's at now.
I'm in the bedroom now, so
he's gone to bed. He's taken us all to bed with him.
They came in to finish a piece of the flooring that they were waiting on some like extra edge pieces. So I got shut down on the office, and then I went outside and there's like landscapers at the park right on the other side. I'm afraid that like the weed eater and the blower
would like
your
story. Stick to it.
We're so used to getting tours of Chuck's house on Zoom calls as Chuck regularly just takes his laptop working.
I think I'm always trying to escape noise.
Before Pat's called,
an apropos line for the entire conversation. I'm just trying to escape the noise.
Yeah, for sure. So,
let's talk about the row before we run out of time.
Yeah, that was my strategic conversation shifter.
So not only do you care about this so much, you actually got this bright fucking idea that you and another future guest that I plan to bring on here, who is equally as fascinating as you are, Chris. You both get this bright fucking idea to row a boat across the whole fucking ocean. Would you care to elaborate on this endeavor of yours so people can understand the mind of the crooked butterfly, please?
Yeah. In Chris's defense, to save his marriage, it was not his idea, and he was very reluctant to do this, right? No, actually, we were approached by a couple other team guys, and they had this thing that they wanted to do, this Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. And they decided they were going to do it as a 2-person team, but then they said, no all-American team has ever been on the podium for this race, this international race. And the best way to do it is in a team of 4. That's the big category team of 4. Yeah. Let's find 2 other suckers to do this with. And so they reached out to a couple mutual connections, and Chris and my name came up a couple times. And so, and it's something along the lines, who's crazy enough, stupid enough, but has some modicum of talent and mental fortitude to undertake this. And so we got on a call, and this is 2 years and 2 months ago that we got on the first call to be interviewed to be on their team. And Chris and I were accepted, which was a really cool surprise because I didn't know Chris was on the list.
Oh wow, that is
until we got on a video call, which was neat. He likes to keep secrets that he's doing cool shit from me, so that I don't do them too.
He's the guy for that, right? I mean,
and I like to keep secrets from him that I'm doing cool shit. Yeah, I love Chris. I'm so close. In fact, that's how we met. Andrea, Chris's wife, was running the fan experience at the games in Carson, and I was helping out as a liaison for headquarters.
You're right. Yeah, that's
and I was good friends with Andrea and Chris at the time, and that's how you and I met. At the fan experience.
Big fan of them as well.
Circles from amazing. Both Andrea's,
love her.
I wish people had the opportunity to get to know Andrea or hear about Andrea as much as they hear about Chris, because she is equally, if not more talented in different ways than Chris, and they make such an exceptional power couple. CrossFit Trident out in Alexandria, the 2 of them, and Misha's Coffee and Trident Mindset, and man, they are 2 individuals that come together, and they're the sum is greater than the whole, or whatever that phrase is. And they do so much good for the world, the energy that they put out. But anyways,
tenacity is a good word for them.
What's that?
Tenacity is a good word for that couple. They have a great dynamic. They're fantastic.
Super complimentary.
I'm so saddened by August. The Doggist is that broke my heart. But anyway, so there's a part of this story, but I think it's funny because I was talking to Chris about this when I was down there. So you guys are planning to get across the ocean in like 30 days or something like that? Isn't it like some crazy thing?
So we want first place. We want to put the American flag on the podium, on top of the podium, and to do that as for veterans, because veterans in an ultra endurance team community, like they actually tend to do more poorly than mix of civilian counterparts and veterans, or just all civilians. It's interesting. There's a lot of reasons why, probably, but so we want to do that, an all veteran team, 3 Navy SEAL dudes and myself, row across the Atlantic Ocean. Probably for first place, we're looking at maybe 33 days, 35 days, depending on weather. Unsupported, so everything that you're going to live on and off of is self-contained on your vessel. The boat's 25.5 feet long, 5 feet, a couple inches wide. There's less than 100 square feet of actual space for 4 people to live and move around on. We're going to row 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 people at a time, nonstop, potentially going 3 up instead of 2 up for 33 plus days. It'd be nice if we got some strong winds and waves and we could do it in 28 days, but
so the story as I heard it, as it applies this, and maybe it's just hearsay, but according to Chris, your response to the record was, when you needed to get in there in 30 days, your response was something to the effect of, let's just bring 28 days worth of food then.
100%.
That is the most fucking Tosh thing that I have ever heard in my life. I died. He was like, so now we're bringing like 28 days worth of food on this road.
That's the plan. Well, we're required by race regs to take 55 days. But I'll be jettisoning.
I'm just saying, you'd be the one who's like, well, if we got to do it in 30 days, let's take 28 days worth of food. Now we got no choice. There is no plan.
That was my immediate response. Burn the ships, right? Like burn the ships, burn the boats, I think is the phrase. But there's something there, right? Like it's a mindset thing. When you have a plan B, your tendency to stick to plan A is sabotaged by your mind's mind. When I was in the shipping container and, trying to mentor the other 3 guys on how to be super successful, and they want to bring a sleeping bag into the shipping container. And it's like, yeah, hey, bring it in there. Why are you bringing it in? But understand that if you bring it in there, you've just weakened yourself to the temptation to use it. And if you're in the sleeping bag, guess what you're not doing? You're not accomplishing the mission. And so it's a mindset thing. It's the way I'm wired. But yeah, 28, I think it was 25 days, because anybody can go 2 days without food. So I think I said, 25 days.
And none of these other people in this boat are lacking in fitness. Like Chris regularly runs super ultra races, and they all do. And then this asshole's like, fuck it, let's just bring 25 days of food. And they were all like, what did he just say? I mean, everybody knew you were dead serious. That story to me was hilarious.
Yeah. And I've known Brian and Jim at that point for about 12 minutes.
This crazy son of a bitch.
Yeah. No, and Chris, man, I'll tell you what, Chris had neck surgery. Man, he had 4 vertebrae fused or done something in his neck. And he might be in better shape right now than I've seen him in the last 5 years. He's really, and when we say better shape, like what is being in shape, like for a rowing endeavor, right? Like all of our, well, not all of our, but my strength, Chris's strength is just plummeted, but our endurance and our resiliency for repetitive movement has gone through the roof. But you have me doing anything, and they joke about it in the yard. I bring guys up all the time, people that I mentor. It's like, hey, we're gonna do some yard work today. I'll give you guys $20 an hour. We're gonna move some rocks or chop some trees, and they always joking like, oh, you're gonna do this row. How come you're out of breath and you need to take a break every 10 minutes? I'm like, man, I'm in rowing. I am in rowing shape. That is it.
Yeah.
Just walking up a hill just wears my ass out nowadays.
Yeah, that's a hell of an endeavor. I have no doubt you'll pull it off. How do people support this endeavor? How can they get more involved if they're listening to this?
Yeah. We have a website, teamshutupandrow.com. All lowercase spelled out. You can go on there. It's on my to-do list to update that thing. You can get to it through the Big Fish Foundation, www.bigfishfoundation.org. We're rowing to champion for the Big Fish Foundation. So Black Rifle gave us $150,000. Rogue Fitness gave us $100,000. A couple other donors have provided XIT Ranch. Between XIT Ranch and a bunch of others, almost another $100,000. Concept 2's in our corner. X Endurance is in our corner, and then we have some world class. Eric Corum with AIM 7. He's this. I don't even know what he does, but he studies human performance for collegiate teams and professional football teams. We've got Angus Collins, who is a 2-time world record holder at this race, as our campaign manager and our coach. And we've got one of his teammates doing all of our physical training for us, all of our road training and requisite core strength training for the row, all in our corner, man. So we're trying to line up. We got a bunch of nutritionists. I've got Cassandra Hobart as my nutritionist. There's so many facets to be successful on this stage at this level. And so you can get on. It's
not simple to row across the ocean. What do you mean? You can't just hop in. You just say, we got this. I do CrossFit.
What's cool is that all these people are getting together and donating money and time and expertise, and we're doing it to champion for the Big Fish Foundation. So giant Big Fish Foundation on the back of our boat with a QR code that gets you to the portals. So just hit those, and you can learn a little bit more. We'll have live tracking, and I'll announce that through our social media so that you can track us live. We're going to do a fundraiser. Team Shut Up and Row is going to do a fundraiser across Veterans Day week this year. And I'm actually in the works of getting ready to send an email out to CrossFit affiliate owners and affiliates that I know that I have a relationship with, and see if we can do that through the CrossFit community. And so we'll log meters together over Veterans Day week. Got some prizes and some stuff out to raise money for the Big Fish Foundation. Concept 2 is going to do an online with their online community. They're going to do a fundraiser for us when we reach our halfway point. Cool. So you can check out Concept 2 as well for that. That'll be in January. The boat, we launched the race December 12th, depending on weather. So we'll halfway right around New Year's.
Yeah. What is the total distance of that?
It's 30. We're just calling it 3,000 nautical miles. It's like 32 or 3,300 miles, depending on your route. So it's a long one.
Sweet. Well, listen, I think that's a good place to kind of wrap this one up, because I think we got a good insight into the mind of Tosh, but I think I speak for all of us on here that I'd love to have you back on so we could deep dive some of that paradigm shifting and shattering mindset of yours. I just wanted to give people an insight into who you are as a person. I don't want to take up your whole day, because we'll be on this thing until like 4:00 in the afternoon, gladly. But if there's anything else you want to add that is incredibly important that you would like to shine a light on, let us know. But otherwise,
no, man, I just appreciate the opportunity to share. I appreciate how you all value me. It means a lot. And I'm just grateful that you and I crossed paths, Tony, and Chuck subsequently through, man, a long time ago, almost 15 years ago now, probably at least 12.
Holy shit. We're like dinosaurs.
Thank you for the dude that you are and doing what you're doing. It is for sure much needed good work in the world.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah. If we can get you out there more, we'll get you out there more. But again, I think I speak for everybody who's listening to this. At least I hope that we find you very fascinating. We're very grateful that a person like you exists in this ecosystem that they have access to. And so if you are listening to this, I would implore you to essentially, one, follow up and take action on the Diesel Days thing. I think it'll be a benefit of anybody who touches it. And then also get involved as much as possible with the Crooked Butterfly, and follow the man, the myth, the legend himself on Instagram. Is that the best way for them to follow you?
Yeah, I think Instagram is the only social media outlet that I try to use. Tosh.crookedbutterfly, and then our business account is Crooked Butterfly, and then we have Big Fish _Foundation. So
we'll throw all the show notes.
Yep, all the links will go in the show notes for all of that stuff. So
I think there's Facebooks. I think there's Facebooks and LinkedIn's and stuff too. But I just contracted
hangs
the guy
out on the
to
ground.
manage that stuff because I don't have enough time to just do that one platform with trying to focus energy on impact.
The last question we all need to know is, how did Crooked Butterfly come to exist?
Oh, a couple different stories in the background that kind of aligned, but I think the short answer is butterflies, they don't fly in straight lines, and they're very, very subject to the moods of nature and the environment around them. And their flight is imperfect, but they're exceptionally beautiful. And I think people have been indoctrinated maybe or influenced to think that their lives have to be straight towards a goal. And when the wind blows and they find themselves in a different direction, they become lost, or they feel that they're not doing what they need to be doing, and it's a great opportunity for them to find dissatisfaction in their life, when in fact it's absolutely beautiful and it's absolutely natural that your path through life is what it is. It meanders and it goes where it goes, and to be present with your journey. The destination is interesting, but the journey is essential.
That was the explanation that I hoped you'd give, because that gave the most accurate exploration of the breadth and the depth that is the Crooked Butterfly, Tosh himself. So I guess we can wrap the show up there. Again, I thank you for being on here. Obviously, I love you like a brother. Thanks for being here, but we're going to do it again, I feel like.
Right on, man. Good to see you guys.
Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you, my friend, for listening to the Fit Affiliate Podcast. If you would be interested in hopping on a free call with us to just kind of chat about what you think your problems are and what you think the gap is between where you're at and where you want to go, we can see if maybe we can help you along that journey, figure out if we're all a good fit to do some sweet things together. So click the link, set up a consult. Let's help you identify some problems that we can mutually solve.